The wind howled through the gaps in the cabin walls, carrying with it the bitter cold of another unforgiving winter night. John sat motionless in his worn wooden chair, staring at the dying embers in the fireplace. In his arms, wrapped in a tattered quilt that had once belonged to his mother, his 3-month-old daughter whimpered softly. The sound cut through him like a knife, sharper than any pain he had ever known. Sarah had been gone for 2 weeks now. 2 weeks since the fever had taken her, leaving him alone in this isolated mountain cabin with a baby who needed her mother. 2 weeks since he had heard her last words, whispered through cracked lips as she held their daughter one final time. 2 weeks since the world had lost all its color and warmth. The baby's cries grew louder, more insistent. John looked down at her small, scrunched face, red from crying, and felt his heart break all over again. He had tried everything he knew. He had wrapped her warm, rocked her gently, walked the floor with her for hours. But what she needed, what she desperately needed, he could not give her. The canned milk he had been trying to feed her was nearly gone, and she refused most of it anyway, spitting it out and crying harder. He stood up and walked to the window, bouncing her gently as he moved. Outside, the snow had begun to fall again, thick flakes that would soon make the already treacherous path down the mountain completely impassable. He had been meaning to ride into town for supplies, but every time he looked at his daughter, at how small and fragile she was, he couldn't bear the thought of leaving her alone for the hours it would take. And he certainly couldn't take her out in this cold. The pantry was nearly bare. A few potatoes, some dried beans, half a bag of flour. He had stopped eating much himself, saving what little he had in case he could somehow get it into his daughter. But nothing worked. She was growing weaker, her cries softer, and the terror of losing her too was consuming him whole. John had been a strong man once. He had worked these mountains since he was a boy, had built this cabin with his own hands, had survived harsh winters and dangerous encounters with wildlife. He had faced down rustlers and ridden through storms that would have killed lesser men. But none of that had prepared him for this. None of it had taught him how to care for a motherless infant, how to be both father and mother, how to keep going when everything inside him wanted to give up. He walked back to the table and tried once more to get the baby to take the thin, watered-down milk from the bottle he had fashioned from a glass jar and a piece of cloth. She turned her head away, her tiny fists clenched, her body rigid with hunger and discomfort. He set the bottle down and pressed her against his chest, feeling her heart beating fast like a small bird's. The guilt was overwhelming. He should have gone to town sooner. He should have asked for help. He should have been stronger, smarter, better prepared. Sarah would have known what to do. Sarah always knew what to do. She had been the practical one, the one who planned ahead, who kept them fed and warm through the long winters. Without her, he was lost. Night fell completely, and the cabin grew darker. He lit the old oil lantern on the table, its warm glow casting long shadows on the walls. The baby had finally exhausted herself into a fitful sleep, and he sat with her in the chair, afraid to put her down, afraid that if he let go she might slip away like her mother had. He must have dozed off because he was startled awake by a sound. At first, he thought it was the wind, but then it came again. A knock. Soft but unmistakable. Three raps on the wooden door. John's heart raced. No one came up this mountain, especially not in winter, especially not at night. He stood slowly, still holding the baby, and approached the door cautiously. His rifle was across the room, but he didn't reach for it. Something in those knocks hadn't sounded threatening. He opened the door a crack and found himself looking at a woman he had never seen before. She was perhaps in her 50s, with kind eyes and weathered features that spoke of a hard life lived with grace. She wore a thick wool coat and a knitted shawl, and snow dusted her shoulders. In her arms, she carried a large wicker basket. "I'm sorry to disturb you so late," she said, her voice gentle. "My name is Martha Hendricks. I live in the valley, about 5 miles east. I heard about your wife. I'm so very sorry for your loss." John stood there, speechless. He didn't know what to say, didn't know why this stranger was at his door in the middle of a snowstorm. Martha glanced at the baby in his arms. "May I come in? It's mighty cold out here, and I've brought some things that might help." He stepped aside, still too stunned to speak, and she entered the cabin. She moved with the efficiency of someone who knew her way around hardship, setting the basket on the table and immediately assessing the situation. Her eyes took in the nearly empty pantry, the cold fireplace, the exhausted man with the crying baby. "When did she last eat?" Martha asked, already unpacking the basket. "I've been trying," John said, his voice hoarse from disuse. "But she won't take the milk. She just cries and cries." Martha pulled out a glass bottle filled with fresh milk, still warm. "This is from my cow, just milked an hour ago. And I've brought something else." She produced a clean cloth and a small rubber nipple. "This might work better than what you've been using." She took the baby gently from his arms, and John was too tired to resist. Martha sat in the chair and began to feed the infant with practiced ease, and to his amazement, his daughter began to drink. Slowly at first, then more eagerly. "There we go," Martha murmured. "There's a good girl." John felt tears streaming down his face. He couldn't help it. After 2 weeks of feeling helpless, of watching his daughter suffer, seeing her finally eat was more than he could bear. Martha looked up at him with understanding. "Sit down before you fall down. When did you last eat?" "I don't remember," he admitted. From the basket, she began pulling out food. Fresh bread, still warm and wrapped in cloth. A jar of stew. Cheese. Apples. Butter. A small sack of sugar. Another of flour. Dried meat. Vegetables. It seemed impossible that one basket could hold so much. "There's a pot of beans on the stove at my house," she said as she fed the baby. "I left it simmering for my husband. He can manage one night without me. I'm staying here tonight to help you get sorted." "I can't ask you to do that," John protested weakly. "You're not asking. I'm telling." Her tone was firm but kind. "Now heat up that stew and eat it. All of it. You're no good to this baby if you collapse from hunger yourself." For the first time in 2 weeks, John did as he was told. He heated the stew on the stove and ate it, and it was the best thing he had ever tasted. He hadn't realized how hungry he was until the food hit his stomach. While he ate, Martha tended to the baby, changing her diaper with supplies she had brought, wrapping her in a clean, soft blanket, and then settling her into a makeshift cradle near the fireplace, which Martha had also rebuilt into a proper fire. "Now," she said, turning to John, "I need you to listen carefully. This baby needs to eat every 3 hours. I've brought enough milk for 3 days, and I'll send my son up with more. I've also brought bottles and nipples. You'll need to keep them clean. Boil them in water after each use." She spent the next hour teaching him how to hold the baby, how to burp her, how to tell when she was hungry versus tired versus uncomfortable. She showed him how to warm the milk, how to test it on his wrist, how much to feed her. She taught him about bathing her, about keeping her warm but not too warm, about watching for signs of illness. "Why are you doing this?" John finally asked. "You don't even know me." Martha paused in her work and looked at him with those kind, knowing eyes. 23 years ago, I was in a similar situation. My husband died in a mining accident, and I was left with 3 small children and no idea how I was going to survive. A woman came to my door with a basket of food and stayed to help me. She told me that someday, when I could, I should do the same for someone else. So here I am. John felt something shift inside him. For 2 weeks, he had been drowning in grief and despair, convinced that he was completely alone. But he wasn't. There was kindness in the world still. There was help. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. "You thank me by taking care of that beautiful baby," Martha replied. "And by asking for help when you need it. Pride is a luxury you can't afford right now. Tomorrow, you're going to ride down to town, and you're going to tell the shopkeeper what you need. You're going to tell the pastor at the church. You're going to let people help you." That night, for the first time since Sarah died, John slept. Not well, and not for long, but he slept knowing his daughter was fed and warm and cared for. Martha stayed in the cabin, sleeping in the chair by the fire, ready to help with the night feeding. In the morning, she taught him the routine again, making sure he could do it himself. Before she left, she wrote down instructions on a piece of paper and tacked it to the wall above the table. My son will be up in 2 days with more milk and supplies, she said as she prepared to leave. And I'll check on you again next week. But you need to get to town, John. You need to let people know you're up here struggling. There's no shame in needing help. After she left, John stood at the window, watching her figure disappear down the snowy path. Then he looked at his daughter, sleeping peacefully in her cradle, her little chest rising and falling steadily. She looked better already. Her color was good, her breathing easy. He picked up the paper Martha had left and read through the instructions. Then he looked at the basket of food on his table, the bottles and nipples, the clean blankets. All of it given freely by a stranger who had once been where he was now. John made himself a promise. He would take care of his daughter. He would ask for help when he needed it. He would survive this, and someday, when he could, he would pass on the kindness that Martha had shown him. He would be the one knocking on a door with a basket of food, offering hope to someone who had lost theirs. The baby stirred and made a small sound, and John went to her, picking her up gently. She opened her eyes and looked at him, and for the first time since Sarah died, he felt something other than grief. He felt hope.